The Border Patrol ship Xiphos 7 drifted through the cold void, its scanners sweeping the endless darkness for anomalies. For 200 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order across the stars. No wars, no rebellions, only the rule of the enlightened species who sat at the Council's high throne. Officer Varnak yawned, his clawed fingers tapping lazily against the console. "Another boring cycle," he muttered. "Nothing ever happens out here." His partner, Silari, flicked her pale blue tendrils in amusement. "Be grateful, Varnak. You wouldn't want to actually find something out here." But then the scanners pinged. A single dot appeared on the screen, moving fast, far faster than any known ship should be able to move. Silari frowned. That can't be right." The dot multiplied. 2 ships, 10, 50, within seconds. The scanner was flooded with thousands of unknown vessels. The ship's AI stuttered, its ancient systems struggling to classify what it was seeing. Error, unknown configuration, error, unidentified drive signatures, error, error. A cold wave of dread settled over Varnak. He had never seen the system react like this. Then the transmission came. A signal broadcasted on every frequency, translated into every language of the Council. A voice, deep, commanding, and undeniably human, spoke 3 words. "We have returned." Varnak's blood turned to ice. Humanity. The Council had erased them 3,000 years ago. They were supposed to be gone, yet now their fleet covered the horizon. The Galactic Council chambers, a colossal structure floating above the core world, Zephyrian Prime, erupted into chaos. The leaders of the 12 great species, beings who had ruled the stars for millennia, shouted over one another, their voices filled with fear and disbelief. "This is impossible," snarled Chancellor Vorek, his scaled fists slamming onto the table. "The humans were wiped out. We destroyed their worlds, their fleets. There is no way they could have survived." "Their ships cover the outer rim," whispered High Archon Rilia of the Vailari, her silver eyes wide with shock. "This is no illusion. They are real." A massive hologram flickered above them, displaying live footage from their border patrols. The human fleet was unlike anything they had ever seen. These were not primitive, outdated warships. These were behemoths, colossal dreadnoughts with black hulls that absorbed light, their designs sleek and terrifyingly efficient. They moved without traditional thrusters, gliding like predators across the void. And their technology, the Council's best AI systems could not classify it. No energy signatures matched any known database. "How did they survive?" muttered Grand Minister Zalcor, his many eyes darting in confusion. A heavy silence fell over the room. They all knew the answer. The Council's war against humanity had been brutal. 3,000 years ago they had feared the potential of the human race, their ability to adapt, to think, to evolve. So they had made a decision. Earth was burned. Humanity was erased from the records, their name only whispered in the darkest corners of history, or so they had believed. Then the chamber darkened. A transmission forced itself onto their screens. A figure appeared, a human. He stood tall, clad in black battle armor, a long red insignia streaked across his chest. His hair was white, his face scarred, but his eyes burned with something the Council had not seen in 3,000 years. "Vengeance! I am Supreme Admiral Alexander Kane of the Terran Exile Fleet," he said. His voice was calm, controlled, but Beneath it was thunder. For 3,000 years we have waited. We have watched from the void, rebuilding in the shadows. His gaze swept across the room, as if he could see them. You thought you had destroyed us. You thought we were forgotten. His lips curled into a cold smile. You were wrong. All council chamber fell into absolute silence, and then Cain spoke the words that made the blood drain from their faces. You have one solar cycle to surrender your empire, or we will take it from you. A cold silence filled the Galactic Council chamber. The greatest rulers of the known galaxy, beings who had sat on their thrones for millennia, felt something they had never felt before: terror. Supreme Admiral Alexander Cain watched them through. The hollow transmission, his expression unreadable. His fleet, the Terran Exile Armada, hung over the outer rim like an executioner's blade. The Council had ruled unchallenged for thousands of years. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed fleets, wiped entire species from existence, but they had never faced this. A legend turned real, a nightmare returning from the void. Chancellor Vorek, the most ruthless of them all, leaned forward, baring his fanged teeth. If you think we will surrender to ghosts, you are mistaken, human. Cain tilted his head slightly. We anticipated this response. The transmission cut off, and then the sky burned. Without warning, half the outer rim defenses went dark. Council-controlled space shattered as Terran warships materialized inside protected sectors, bypassing all known hyperspace routes. Impossible. The Violari High Archon's voice trembled. How did they... Their technology, Grand Minister Zalcor whispered. It is beyond us. Then the battle reports poured in. A single human dreadnought had engaged the entirety of the Zephyrian defense fleet and won. One Terran warship. 300 Council warships. Battle duration 6 minutes. No human vessel had been destroyed. The Council members watched in horror as battle footage played before them. The dreadnought, code-named Excalibur, absorbed incoming fire, its hull reshaping reality around it. Enemy energy weapons simply vanished, redirected into nothingness. Then it fired, not lasers, not plasma, something worse. Ships didn't explode, they simply ceased. 1 second they were there, the next they were gone, as if erased from existence. They're using phase-shift weaponry, Zalcor gasped. They've developed reality disruptors, weapons that broke the fundamental laws of physics, weapons that should not exist. And yet the humans had them, the Council's greatest war fleets, fleets that had conquered thousands of worlds, were being erased like insects. The Council chamber descended into chaos. Chancellor Vorek roared, his claws ripping into the table. We must retaliate, deploy the core fleets, burn their colonies to ash. They have no colonies, Silari whispered. Her voice was hollow. They are an exile species. There is nothing we can attack. They had always ruled through fear because every species had something to lose, but the humans, they had already lost everything, and in that loss they had become unstoppable. A single message arrived from the Terran exile fleet. It contained only one sentence. 12 hours remain. The Galactic Council had to make a choice: surrender or be erased. The Galactic Council had ruled for 3,000 years. For 3,000 years, no enemy had ever dared to challenge them. No rebellion had ever survived. No empire had ever risen to match their strength until now. The Terran exile fleet had shattered their illusions of power. Entire fleets had been wiped from existence. Their most fortified worlds were falling without a single Terran casualty. And now, time was running out. The Council's last gamble chancellor, Vorek, his pride bleeding, stood before the assembled. Leaders of the Council, the last of the warlords, the rulers of the galaxy's 12 great species, now sat in terrified silence. "We will not kneel," Vorek snarled. His reptilian eyes burned with rage. "We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We will not surrender to an extinct race." He turned to High Admiral Thalzar, commander of the core fleet, the largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. "You will take every remaining warship," Vorek commanded. "You will hunt them down, and you will burn them out of existence, Admiral." Thalzar hesitated. He had seen the battle reports. He had watched 300 of his best warships vanish in minutes. "This is madness," the Admiral whispered. "We cannot—" "You will obey," Vorek roared. Thalzar took a slow breath, and then he turned off his communicator and walked away. One by one, other Council officers did the same. The greatest war fleet in galactic history refused to fight. Vorek's eyes widened in horror. "No, no, you cowards, you cannot—" A voice interrupted him. Cold, precise, unyielding, Admiral Alexander Kane. His face appeared before them again, his expression calm, his tone final. "Your time is up." The Terran fleet moved, the skies above. Zephyrian Prime, the very heart of the Galactic Council, darkened as thousands of Terran warships emerged. For the first time in history, the Council's homeworld was under siege. But the humans did not fire. Instead, they broadcasted their demands. Surrender, stand trial, face justice, or be erased. The Council had always believed that power was all that mattered, that the weak would always bow to the strong, and now, standing in the face of a power they could not defeat, they fell apart, one by one. Council members broke rank, begging for mercy, but Chancellor Vorek refused. Instead, he activated the final contingency plan, a planetary self-destruction protocol. If the Council could not rule the galaxy, then they would burn with it. Kane's eyes narrowed. "I thought you might try that." He raised his hand. The UNSV Ragnarok, the largest Terran warship ever built, positioned itself above the Council chamber and fired, not a weapon of destruction, but a gravity field. The self-destruction sequence was halted instantly, its power crushed under Terran control. The Council was powerless. For the first time in 3,000 years, they had lost. The age of the Galactic Council was over, and humanity had returned. The once mighty Galactic Council sat in silent defeat. For 3,000 years, they had ruled as gods, shaping the fate of entire civilizations, wiping out species they deemed dangerous. Now they were nothing. The Terran exile fleet hovered above Zephyrian Prime, its warships casting shadows over the grandest empire the galaxy had ever known. But there was no destruction, no planetary bombardment. Instead, the humans had forced them to surrender, and now the trial of history's greatest criminals was about to begin. The council chambers had been converted into a war court. Admiral Alexander Kane stood at the center, his black battle armor gleaming under the artificial lights. The last surviving rulers of the council sat shackled before him, stripped of their titles, stripped of their power. Behind Cain, millions of beings from across the galaxy watched, broadcasted on every channel across every world once ruled by the council. This trial was more than a political event. It was the moment history changed. Cain's voice was cold and steady. For 3,000 years, this council ruled through genocide, deception, and oppression. He stepped forward, his piercing gaze settling on Chancellor Vorek, the architect of Earth's destruction. Your crimes are recorded, the annihilation of entire species, the enslavement of billions, the systematic erasure of Earth. Cain, expression hardened, today you answer for them. The former chancellor laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You think this changes anything, human? His reptilian eyes glowed with defiance. You may have defeated us, but you are no different, he sneered. Power is power. You will rule as we did. You will become what you despise. Cain didn't blink. No. Vorek's smirk faded. Cain turned to the galaxy. We did not come to conquer. We came to end an empire of tyranny. He raised his voice, letting the words echo through the universe. There will be no Terran Empire. No new council of rulers. We will not make the same mistakes. Silence fell. The old order had been broken, and in its place, humanity was offering something else. The war was over. But instead of taking power, the Terrans dismantled it. The planets that had once been ruled, under the council, were given autonomy, each world allowed to govern itself. The remaining council members were sentenced, some to exile, some to lifetime imprisonment, and others to face the same fate they had given so many others. And then, in the final act of the Terran return, they rebuilt Earth, not as a capital, not as a throne, but as a symbol. A world that had once been erased, now restored as a beacon of justice. The message was clear: power does not make one worthy to rule. As the Terran exile fleet left the Galactic core, Cain took one last look at the universe they had reclaimed, not through conquest, not through fear, but through revenge, justice, and wisdom. The galaxy would never forget what had happened here. The legends of humanity would never fade again. And in the endless void of space, as the last Terran warship disappeared into the stars, the universe held its breath because it knew. One thing for certain, if humanity was ever betrayed again, they would return.